After years being closed, the Quneitra crossing between Israel and Syria is once again open, and now so is the crossing between Syria and Jordan, marking a significant return to calm within the war-torn Syrian country. That doesn't mean all is well and forgotten, however, far from it. And returning now to discuss this further is founder and executive director of the Israel Institute for Strategic Studies, Dr. Martin Sherman. Thank you so much for coming back in.
Thank you for having me again.
Okay, so let's start off, with the general question. What does the opening of this crossing mean for the region, for Israel?
Well, only the very rash make predictions about Syria. I don't think anyone had predicted the situation a few years ago. In fact, very few years ago, even senior figures in the Israeli defense establishment were predicting that Assad was about to fall. But I think there's room for caution. On the one hand, you may have the advent of a central authority that can impose stability on the region. On the other hand, we're not really going back to the status quo ante, because as opposed to the previous situation, Iran and Russia are really the masters of Syria, and Iran is intent on turning Syria into something like Lebanon, and the Russians don't seem to be too vigorous in presenting it.
Well, so that was kind of my next follow-up question, is if there is a return to calm in Syria, if we could call it that, if there is a return of some sort to calm in Syria, why is it that Iranian and Russian forces, why wouldn't Assad want them out?
Well, I don't think it really matters what Assad wants. I don't think Assad calls the shots. I think that probably the leading player here is Iran, as long as the internal dissent back home doesn't to debilitate its strength to maintain its military effort. But Iran is intent on turning Syria into South Lebanon, and I think we have to worry about the prospect of having Hezbollah or Shiite militias under Iranian control deploying in southern Syria.
So that's actually my last question. I'll bounce off of that. UNDOF forces, they've now returned to patrolling in the DMZ, and you have, but a lot of reports are still coming out that fighters from either Jabhat al-Nusra, from Hezbollah, from all sorts of different organizations have not quite left the demilitarized zones yet. So,
well, I wouldn't place much store on the UN troops. They're very effective in keeping the peace so long as the peace keeps itself. As soon as there's any real threat, they immediately evacuate. So I wouldn't place any store on.
And you don't think that you don't think that they pose any sort of deterrent against the encroachment of Hezbollah or other Iranian or proxy forces?
Not at all. I put it this way: I think it would be very dangerous to assume that they would be.
All right. Well, Dr. Sherman, thank you so much for coming back in again today.
Thank you for having me.